In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Each week on Culinary Confidential, Christina Cates, a seasoned foodie who has worked at some of New York City's top restaurants, will share her passion for the culinary world. Whether you're a professional chef, a restaurant enthusiast, or a lover of good food, Christina dives into the heart of hospitality, exploring the trends, triumphs, and challenges facing the food service profession. And you won't want to miss her chats with some of the most interesting and influential industry voices. And now, please take your seat at the table as Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates starts now, exclusively on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates. This show is produced in association with my dear friend, Lucas A. Ferrara. There are certain names in hospitality that feel almost cinematic, names that carry with them not just restaurants or events, but entire worlds of imagination, spectacle, and storytelling. And tonight's guest was practically born into one of those worlds. Jennifer Oz LeRoy is the great-granddaughter of Jack Warner, you know, one of the Warner brothers, and the granddaughter of legendary Hollywood producer Mervyn LeRoy, the man behind the timeless classic The Wizard of Oz and known for discovering Clark Gable. So you could say that a sense of wonder, of drama, of magic was written into her story from the very beginning. But Jennifer didn't simply inherit a legacy. She lived it. She grew up in the orbit of one of New York City's most iconic dining rooms, the legendary Tavern On The Green, created and run by her father, restaurateur and nightlife impresario Warner LeRoy. Warner was the over-the-top owner and operator of other famous New York City institutions like Maxwell's Plum and the Russian Tea Room, as well as creator of the Great Adventure theme park. It first opened to the public simply as Great Adventure in 1974 under the direction of Warner. Six Flags then acquired the park in 1977. Now, back to the hospitality side. These weren't just restaurants. They were stages, crystal chandeliers, society weddings, celebrities, power brokers. A place where hospitality wasn't just about food. It was about theater, about atmosphere, about creating a moment people would remember for the rest of their lives. And Jennifer learned that craft from the inside out. Not from a boardroom, but from the kitchen line. She started working in the restaurant as a teenager, learning every position, every detail of the machine that makes hospitality work. Then, life threw her a series of storms her way. When her father passed away, Jennifer inherited the enormous responsibility of running Tavern On The Green at just 22 years old. Suddenly, in charge of an institution with nearly 1,000 employees and one of the most famous dining rooms in America. And if that wasn't enough, only months later, the city itself was shaken by the tragedy of 9/11. For many people, that might have been the end of the story. But for Jennifer, it was the beginning of a new one. Because the thing about people who grow up in hospitality is this. They understand something deeply human. That food, gathering, and celebration are how we mark the moments of our lives. The joyful ones, the difficult ones, the unforgettable ones. Tonight's show is personal for me because my very first job in the New York City restaurant scene was at Tavern On The Green back in 2004. Tavern is situated on 67th Street inside Central Park. I can remember driving home down 9th Avenue on my way back to New Jersey from my interview for a hostess position and calling my mom and telling her, yeah, they said I could work there and to come back on Monday. She screamed as if I hit the lottery, and I didn't know it at the time, but I really did. There is no other restaurant that could have set me up for success operationally like that place. Tavern On The Green was a monster of an operation. It had 6 dining rooms, plus a huge wraparound seasonal garden for dining that added a few hundred extra seats from May to October every year. At any given time, you could seat 1,000 people comfortably throughout the restaurant. You learned very quick how to operate at a large scale, and it was all in the preparation. Every job after that was just easier. And to run a restaurant of that magnitude while trying to work with union employees is nothing short of a superpower. Tavern On The Green was special, though. It was adorned with baccarat crystal chandeliers, mirrored walls, glass dining rooms. Christ, it even had its own gift shop. Every inch of this sprawling restaurant was decorated. Just to give you an idea of how impressive the operation was at Tavern on the Green, it topped national rankings for revenue for a standalone restaurant. In 2007, and I worked there at this time, we posted $38 million in sales just for that year alone. Do you know how many meals you need to sell to make that happen? It was turn and burn in those dining rooms. We would serve thousands of people a day. It was absolutely incredible. Tavern was so special to people that dined there, and I would meet people every single day that would say to me they saved up their whole entire life to be able to visit New York City and dine at the famous Tavern on the Green. Now, eventually, Jennifer stepped away from the Tavern era and began building something entirely her own, something that blended her family's flair for spectacle with her personal passions. In the Hudson Valley, she created Oz Farm, an extraordinary 82-acre equestrian estate and event destination, and it's located in Saugerties, New York. And this is where weddings, celebrations, and gatherings unfold in a setting that feels, well, a little bit like stepping somewhere over the rainbow. It's a place where culinary hospitality meets storytelling, where the elegance of old-world entertaining meets the natural beauty of the countryside, and where Jennifer has continued doing what her family has done for generations, creating unforgettable experiences. But what makes Jennifer Oz LeRoy so fascinating isn't just the legacy she carries. It's the resilience and the reinvention. The understanding that hospitality, at its best, is about more than food on a plate or a beautiful table setting. It's about how a space makes you feel. It's about the people around the table. And sometimes it's about believing that a little bit of magic still belongs in the world of dining and entertaining. So tonight, we're going to talk about legacy, restaurants, reinvention, the art of hosting, and why the most unforgettable gatherings always have a story behind them. Because if anyone understands how to turn hospitality into a kind of magic, it's Jennifer Oz LeRoy, and she joins us right now. Jenny, welcome to the show. It's been, I have to say, easily 15 plus years since we've last spoken.
You look the same, by the way. You look the same. You look beautiful.
You look the same,
Tavern
okay?
On The Green didn't ruin your skin, which is amazing.
It just ruined my soul.
It either makes you or breaks you. It was the only way. Yeah.
No, I was saying in the intro, the most complimentary things about Tavern on the Green, because for anyone who's never been there and doesn't understand the operation that it was, because it's not the same now. I mean, It was a beast. It was run or get ran over, and I was 20 years old when I started there, so that was my first job in New York, as you know, and you were my first boss ever.
I mean, well, what an honor, by the way. And also, obviously, you know, women in the industry is such a different. I mean, how many women worked at Tavern at that time? It's so crazy. Yeah. Really, I mean, when I started in the kitchen, there were 2 other girls in the kitchen, and that was it. So that's so incredible. I was trying to figure out, so what year did you start at Tavern?
2004.
Okay, so...
It might have been 2003, but it's somewhere around that time, and I was there till 2008.
So I was 25,
yeah.
24. I mean, we look great. So whatever we're doing, somebody should tap into us.
That's
okay?
right.
Bethany Frankel, who loves Tavern on the Green and loves us. I mean, whatever we're doing. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really nice to talk to, believe it or not, I don't get to talk to a lot of people who interacted at Tavern these days. I mean, I do spend a lot of my time upstate and in Florida. And, you know, so many people at Tavern have gone on to do all these great things. I have visited Tavern again, which it's so different.
It's so different.
But for people who don't know and understand what it was during my dad's era or reign, especially when he was there, but also you were there sort of after that when it was the beginning with me. And, you know, we went through so much, but we were almost 600 employees. We were a union-run restaurant, you know, 8 dining rooms, 26,000 square feet, a building that has been, you know, is hundreds of years old. So, and you're up against the city of New York, you know, as your landlord, keeping them happy. So it was quite a challenge. And we had all just lived through 9/11 also. I mean, it was such a crazy time. So I was lucky to really have people who really loved it. But it's not like running any other restaurant. When you have 600 employees, you're sort of, it's sort of like you're the mayor and you have to go through a lot of steps to get anything done.
Well, I'll never forget when I first started working there, and Michael Desiderio was the general manager. He said to me, he's like, you're the general manager of your own dining room, because it's essentially 6 restaurants sharing a shared space. And you have to operate each dining room separately, but together with the rest, because the flow of people that would come in every single day, I mean, most restaurants would dream about doing that in a week. It was an unreal experience.
I mean, 600 covers was a slow day for us. That was like, we're dead. Like,
eaters complaining they didn't want to work.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, waiters were doing 10,000 covers a weekend, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
It's unheard of.
Yeah.
And people who don't understand, there was no other education like it. When people say, oh, you didn't go to culinary school or anything like that, I was like, I didn't have to. And, you know, for me, I started in the kitchen. I am a really in the trenches kind of person. Like, I'm really lucky that I just want to work hard every single day. And I love restaurants so much. And starting in that restaurant and then us opening the Russian Tea Room, there was no other experience like it. And now, 30 years later since I started, because I'm 47, I started in the kitchen when I was 16. So 31 years since I started a career in restaurants and hospitality. And I do want to share my stories and things that people don't know about and things that I dealt with, because it's just, it wasn't my style to sort of talk about, you know, some of the difficulties. But, you know, I'm first and foremost, you know, leading a team and making people love what they do every day. And Michael Desiderio was a perfect example of that. He had to be the general manager. I had to fight to get him back in there. I don't know if he ever told you the story. This is a good one. I tried to get him back. I think he was working for Joe Baum at the time.
At the Rainbow Room.
And trying to get him back in the restaurant, because our former general manager, who there's no love lost there, when my father died, the manager at the time and I did not see eye to eye.
Right.
And I knew I wanted Michael Desiderio, and he wouldn't get on the phone with me. And I was like, what would my dad do? So when my dad first hired Michael Desiderio, he was running the US Open, and my dad would go out and roll out plans to the Russian Tea Room on the US Open, like during the finals. And Michael was like, Warner, you can't be doing this.
Oh my God, I didn't know.
So he finally got him. So when my father passed, you know, we lost him for a little while. And so I had to get him back. And I literally sent him a Mont Blanc pen with a blank check and said, you fill in the number. It was the only thing I could do. And he was by the way, very respectable. But at that point, it was like, and bringing him back into the building, it was a really special time. And we're still very close. I love Michael. He has a beautiful family and a beautiful life. He's just one of the most special people ever. So,
well, I ran into him over this past summer at Yankee Stadium. He was with a bunch of his kids going to watch a game
with his 5 kids and beautiful wife and beautiful life. Yeah, I'm sure. That's so funny. Yeah. And Bismarck, I mean, I'm still close with a lot of the, you know, people who I feel really, you know, helped raise me in the industry and support me during that time. Because I was 22 when I inherited all of that. It was wild.
I know. What was your mindset like at that time?
You know, it's really interesting because it was just my dad's been gone 25 years. Wow. So I was 22 when he died. So it's like he's been gone longer than I had time with him on this earth. And I'm really lucky. My mother's very healthy, and I talk to her every day, and we spend a lot of time together, and she has so many incredible stories about him. But to think that I was a kid, and my mindset at the time, I mean, I remember the moment that the will was read, and this is part of what I'm writing about now. But it was like I was going to be in charge, and my family was going to support me, and there was a reason my dad felt strongly about this, and my thought was, I can't let everybody down. And, you know, at the time, we also had the Russian Tea Room. We had some wonderful partners, but he had just put $30 million into a restaurant. So they wanted to know when they were going to, you know, when things were going to pick up. And so I remember saying, you know, my father's biggest risks are his biggest successes. So, you know, Tavern was a risk, and the Tea Room was a risk, and Great Adventure, and Maxwell's Plum. And my dad famously said, you have to go out on a limb and you have to try. And the best people do. And, you know, we're all still, it feels like the world is in such a different place now, but that's how you have to live by. So at that time, I thought, I have 600 plus employees at Tavern, 300 plus employees at Russian Tea Room, and they have families to support. And it's my job right now to figure out how to continue to support them. So that's really what my mentality was.
Well, when they read the will, did you have any inkling that this was coming down the pipe for you? Did your mother even? Your mother, Kay LeRoy, did she have an idea that this was coming to Jenny?
I think that at the time, again, my father was not well, obviously. I had a feeling that he wasn't going to make it through the year. He just, the one of the hardest things I will say is that at the actual time of his death, I was working at the Russian Tea Room all the time. And he would say, I need you to be the first person people see, whether it's the events and the celebrities or, just everyday lunch people. You have to be the first face that people see. You have to be the face of the restaurant for me because I can't be there. And if they ask you if I'm okay, I need you to say, my father's doing great. He'll be back in the restaurant next week. So he said to staff, to employees, to the team members, to everybody. So except for upper management, I mean, people obviously had an idea because they hadn't seen him, but he really, and he was fighting cancer with everything. We had the best doctors and all of that, but people would say, how's your father? And I would say, he's doing great. He'll be back in the restaurant next week. And I would say that about 100 times, a week. And so that was really such a challenge. Just on a personal note, I was like, I hadn't seen him that much because I was at the restaurant and they didn't want me to see him because I was exposed to so many people and his immune system was so low. Yeah. So that was, as a kid, but I was like, I was where he wanted me to be. So at the time, my sister and my family were really supporting him. So I really was the only one with the boots on the ground for the family. And he took a lot of support and he had such a big life that the rest of my family was really supporting him. So I was in the restaurant every day. And so that sort of gave me an idea, but it was a huge shock. And my family was incredibly supportive. And, that happened in February of 2001. And then September 11th happened 7 months later. I mean, it was such an unbelievable year to live through. And thank God for Tavern and the team that people wanted to rejoice and celebrate that year. They all came to Tavern. Like, we had a huge year at Tavern that year, which we were really lucky. The tea room did not. Me. Yeah. So we had a great year that year because I think people really wanted to come out and celebrate. The tea room had a very hard year because it was in Midtown and people weren't going out. So we were really lucky, but we had some big bills to pay off. My dad had taken a lot of risks before he passed away. I was very lucky. The tea room, a few years later, it just wasn't quite making it. I mean, he had spent $30 million building this restaurant. And luckily, I remember the day that the team, sort of the accounting team, were like, the tea room, it was doing $20 million a year, but it just wasn't making it, which is insane, those numbers, but it was true. And I remember I walked around the whole city one day and I was like, what am I going to do? And then I remember seeing a sign for the United States Golf Association, and I was like, well, maybe they'll buy the building. I mean, we just really didn't have a choice at that time, and I didn't want Tavern to suffer. My mom was really supportive in a lot of the decisions because she had seen so much for so many years with my father, and so we talked about it, and we called them, and they made an offer on the building, and we were very lucky. Unfortunately, they hadn't zoned it, but they hadn't done the correct zoning or whatever happened after they bought it. So now it's still the Russian Tea Room, which is great that it's intact. And, it won the James Beard Award. And I had to accept the award for my father, which was a crazy night to just go through that. So it was quite a roller coaster.
Your life has been a roller coaster, and we're going to get more into that. Stick around. When we return, Jennifer Oz LeRoy is sharing the untold stories, the lessons learned, and the dreams that drive her from New York City to Oz Farm. More with Jenny after the break.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970. The Answer.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential. We're here with the luminous Jennifer Oz LeRoy, diving deep into her journey from a storied family legacy to shaping iconic New York City dining institutions and now bringing life to Oz Farm. Let's get into the heart of her story. This is where the magic really unfolds. Jenny, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I love being on this show.
Oh, great. We love to hear that here. Now, we kind of jumped to the middle part of your life, but let's take it back, right? Because you grew up in New York City, which is, it could be a child's dream. The city was your playground. Central Park was literally your playground. Now,
literally, yes.
Like literally. You grew up, I think, was it the famous Dakota building?
Yes. It's so interesting because, I really have shifted my life a little bit to live in upstate. I realize, which a lot of people these days, it's like living a little bit outside the city and then being able to go and play in the city is nice and go to the theater and things like that. So whenever I come across somebody now and they're like, you grew up, where? So the Dakota, growing up in the Dakota, I mean, it's like no other building in New York City, obviously. And my brother, Max, was very close with Sean Lennon and, Yoko. I mean, their back door was 8 feet away from our back door.
Unbelievable.
So I grew up in this crazy world of celebrities and they were just normal people to me. I'm very lucky. My parents, I am a hybrid. I mean, my parents really could not have been more different. I mean, my father grew up in Hollywood. His father was Mervyn LeRoy, who produced The Wizard of Oz and 86 other films, and Jack Warner and Harry Warner and all the people in my family. My dad grew up in that world. And then my mother grew up in England and in Europe, and she worked, she was a TWA flight attendant, she was a cook, she was a chef. She's an incredible artisan of everything. I mean, she writes in calligraphy. She's like just a natural artist and brilliant woman. So when they met, they had come from very different parts of the world. So, growing up in the Dakota and John Lennon is your neighbor and my mother's an English, 20-something, like you can imagine, but she handled it with such grace as she's taught me. Whereas my dad was like, rhinestone suits and a pink limousine kind of guy. So it was a wonderful upbringing in that world. But yes, we grew up in the Dakota. I went to Dalton. It was a hard school for me to go to through high school, but had the classic, very lucky, very privileged young age, growing up in New York City. But it never felt right for me. The only way to really explain it is that on the weekends, I wanted to work. It was just weird. It was like I should have been going to all the all the birthday parties and all of that. And so
the society
I found my
life.
first. Yes, and of course, my father. We did all these events, but my mother, who wanted to cook and create flowers and do all these things, but after she ran 10 miles in the morning, I mean, she was incredible and made clean the house. She was just an incredible homemaker. I wanted something, and I did. She was such a great chef that I didn't know if it was that, but I really started my work ethic career at a farm. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to ride horses. It was the one thing that I was just drawn to. So starting at 8 years old, my mom would take me to the barn in the morning and I would help the barn owner. Her name was Cookie and she was rough, but it was one of the best lessons I could have learned. And I would just help at the barn on the weekends and anytime I could. My grandfather Mervyn was a real lover of horses, so it makes sense that that's where I got it from. But I learned the work ethic there. It was like the horses don't care where you grew up or who your parents are. They need food. They need to be taken care of well. And my trainer said, "You don't drink water until your pony drinks water." So I grew up in that. And then at 15, I started working in a restaurant. And then at 16 at Tavern, and my work ethic in the kitchen. I mean, that was my new love, was working in the kitchen at Tavern on the Green, which was insane because I would cry half the nights when I got home because it was so crazy. But that's really my childhood, although I had this incredible life of meeting every different kind of person in New York City and going to the theater and experiencing the fact that you could really be whatever you wanted to be. I really didn't quite know where I fit in that. So I had these incredibly talented, smart parents, and I just was like, where do I fit in this? And I believe that work ethic is what came out of it, because I've done every job of any place that I've ever owned or run. So in the restaurant, at Tavern, I started in the kitchen. I was the expediter. I was an overnight cleaner. I was a food receiver. I worked the line. I did everything. And then I was sort of thrust to wear a black suit and be at the front. And then my dad passed away. And so it's like, and the same thing with my farm. My farm now, I can run the tractor. I do the mowing. I do all that. I just really have found myself, I'm such a worker, and it's what I love to do. And but it all comes from where I grew up,
I love that. But when we do talk about your remarkable lineage, when did you first understand the weight and beauty of your family's history?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I definitely understood that it was different, when you're going to school in a limo and, you're like, okay, so my family, somebody's done something really right in this family to be very successful. And the Wizard of Oz. I mean, the Wizard of Oz, my middle name is Oz.
That's unbelievable, by the way.
It is such a gift. And, there were 7 Jennies in my class. Jennifer was the most popular name of 1978. So everybody went by their name and their middle name. So I was lucky to be Jenny Oz, which is what, I'm really lucky. My mother says, like, I made sure that you were, my grandfather and my mother named me. And because a lot of other people in the family have Warner, and my sister Carolyn has Plum, which is a great name as a middle name after Maxwell's Plum. But I really was like, wait a second, like I'm, and people would say, the Wizard of Oz, and my grandfather, I was very young when he died, but he was just this wonderful man who loved horses and loved film and acting. And it's the only other industry I've ever wanted to be in, to be honest, besides restaurants and hospitality, is film and creating. And that's why I'm writing stories now about my family and my life. But I really realized probably, around 9 or 10 years old, when the impact of the Wizard of Oz. And then going into like 12, 13, obviously at Tavern on the Green, when everybody wants to book their bar mitzvah and their bat mitzvah at your dad's restaurant. And I'm like, wait, nobody else has that? You don't,
yeah.
Your dad doesn't shut down Great Adventure for you in your class, which is what he did in 9th grade before he had sold it to Six Flags. But I really, honestly, on the weekends, I was at the barns working, and I would cook with my mom, and we would do all these things. So we really had I had a very grounded life experience with my parents, and my dad was always working. Like when we were home in the Hamptons, or even his relaxed state, he was researching menus and flowers and chefs, and always. And I'm very lucky. I feel as if I've inherited that feeling. Like nothing is ever done. The house is never done. The restaurant's never done. There's always more to grow from. So. But it definitely, I understood the impact somewhere between 10 and 12 that my life maybe was a little different than other people's.
Is there something about your family that the world doesn't see or didn't see but means everything to you?
I think that point of saying that my parents both were always working, like they were always planning and doing things. And I think that's something that people don't necessarily know. They just sort of think my dad pulled up, I mean, the biggest heartbreak of Warner LeRoy's probably life was that people criticized the food at Tavern on the Green for his entire life, and the tea room, and the amount of research and patience and studying. I currently have every memo he ever wrote, which is from 1977 until the day that he passed away in 2001. And the amount of work that he put into everything, this, the china, the onion soup, the lighting, the uniforms, the messages that the phone calls, the reservationist, which was such a big thing back then. We didn't all have, Resi and Open Table. And I think that's probably the thing that people maybe don't realize that I wish they did, was the amount of research and work that both of my parents put into all the projects that we did. And, some work and some were huge successes. And people don't always know the ones that don't work. Like the Potomac was a restaurant my dad spent millions of dollars on, and it just didn't work. I mean, he shut it down in the middle of lunch. Like he literally just one day said, we're not staying here anymore. And he spent millions of dollars and hours, thousands of hours just working on stuff. And that's something that I don't think people really understood. It wasn't about the glory. Like 1% of it is walking through a dining room in a suit and, and shaking people's hand and being thanked for an event. 99% of the work is done behind the scenes and all day and all night with team members. And that's something I don't think people realize. And I'm sure you can relate to this. My really good friends, like, it's hard to be friends with anyone who's never carried a tray. I'm
right.
Like, if you don't know what it's like to work in a restaurant or be a chef, like, I don't want to hear any complaints about going to a restaurant. It's just a different culture. It's just people don't get it.
It teaches you how to speak to people and relate to people. I have friends like that.
Yeah.
When we go to dinner, they get frustrated or, they just like snap at the waiter a little bit. And I'm like, stop.
I can't.
And I've had friends say to me, you've taught me how to be a better patron in a restaurant.
And they have no idea. And it's honestly, it sort of breaks you for that part. Like I am like, as long as anyone, whenever they say, I'm sorry, your food's right. I'm like, as long as you're bringing me food and drinks, I am so happy. And we've just been on that side, and there's such a factor, it's a human being factor, and like things are going to be different. And we're just in this culture where like the food has to be, and we're all so impulsive now, like everybody gets everything so quickly that's going to be interesting moving ahead for the restaurant world, because, it's tough. You're dealing with hungry people and they want their food fast. So that's probably the biggest impact, is that like people didn't really understand how much, like when the Russian Tea Room got its first bad review, which, it really suffered. And I mean, the pain that my family went through for that, my dad was heartbroken. I'd never seen him so upset, but he retaliated. I mean, he took out ads in the New York Times every week for the next 10 weeks with all the positive reviews. And Bill Grimes, who wrote that review after my father died, he had a radio show, and he had like a pet chicken or something, and the chicken disappeared, and he did this whole tribute to my dad and being like, I bet Warner took my chicken, or something funny like that.
So
but, people didn't really see that. And obviously the staff didn't really see it. I mean, he was very vocal if he wasn't happy about something, but they didn't see things like that we saw on a daily basis at home, so.
Okay, we're about to take a deeper look at what it really takes to honor a legacy, create something new, and make it unforgettable. Don't go anywhere. Jennifer Oz LeRoy's journey continues right after this.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 55 East 59th Street, New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
And we're back. If you thought you knew Jennifer Oz LeRoy, think again. From the iconic halls of Tavern on the Green and the Russian Tea Room to the soil of Oz Farm, she's been crafting experiences that touch the senses and the soul. Let's pick up where we left off, Jenny. I had to go to commercial break because Ryan was waving me here, but I did want to ask you at the end of the last segment there, what do you think of the New York City dining scene now compared to when you were in New York?
I think the world food scene is fantastic. And New York City, New York will forever be my home. And I really try to go in once a week right now and have dinner at different locations. And I always go to my, of course, favorites, I can't stay away from Nobu and Balthazar and all the favorites. But I think the food scene is incredible. I think there's a great generation of people. I think that people like 11 Madison, when they try to go vegan, I mean, more power to, I think the environmental impact, like that part of the world and our culture is so incredible. And there's no other braver, creative place for restaurants than New York City. I do have to say, I've been, as I do catering now, and I'm always exploring new restaurants and ideas. There's this whole thing now that in my mind about like Ozempic and the world, and like there's so many people on food, dietary things that they're going through. And even my events that I'm booking right now, and I'm like, I'm trying to tailor menus for them because I'm like, there's this whole thing where people are just eating a lot less in some, in some areas. So it's sort of like, you have to change, the cooking scene. I mean, if you look at food menus from 30 years ago, they're so different. Like my mom and I were talking about, salmon aspic and consomme and like all these things that are just not on menus anymore. But I think the New York food scene is fantastic. And I think New York has to be supported, and it's the greatest place in the world to eat. But upstate New York, where I mostly live now, we have these incredible farms. Like when you go to Union Square to the farmers market, there are farms up here. So I'm so lucky that we can use that here with farm to table and weddings and events and things like that. So it's, the food scene has not changed much, in my opinion. It's only getting better in New York City.
All right, you've successfully blended your love for horses and events with Oz Farm. Can you tell us about the vision behind this venture and how you bring that magical experience to life for your clients?
Sure. Well, first of all, when Tavern closed, I was trying to figure out, what direction I was going to go in. And I did look at other restaurant spaces, but when you've had 26,000 square feet in Central Park, it's kind of hard to find a model kind of like that.
I would say.
And to be honest, I had a lot of opportunities for partnerships with some very big names. And if we rewind a little bit, that was the year that the Russian Tea Room closed and my brother passed away. And that was the year that I said, I have to ride again. Like I needed a balance. Like life has to be a balance. And I love to work, and the restaurant and the events are my life. But I realized at that moment that life is just short, and I wanted to wake up and see my horses outside every day if I could. That's all I wanted for my life. Even if I saw them for 5 minutes and I go to an event, that's what I wanted. So some very good friends of mine at the time had found this property in Saugerties, New York, and there was this horse show that had opened up here. And I just came up to see it. And actually Michael Desiderio came with me.
Really?
And he did. It was a hard time. Like I said, Max had just died, and I knew that I just needed some fresh air, some room to breathe even more at that time. So I found this wonderful, 80 plus acre property with a mountain view. I mean, it needed a lot of work, but I was like, this is my home. This was where I was going to build something. So Oz Farm, that's when I bought the farm. But after Tavern closed, I did a lot of amazing consulting around the world, actually. But I did Gurney's in Montauk, I did the Hotel Capri in Southampton, I did some properties in Palm Beach. Most recently, I did some properties in Saudi Arabia, which was wild.
Wow.
So at that moment, I was like, I had done a couple of years consulting, and I wasn't at my farm. I was never here. So I decided, I think it was 2000, it took until about 2015. And I said, you know what? I'm either going to go spend time at my farm, or I'm going to sell it and be on the road consulting, which was a wonderful life, but I can't do both. My sister had moved here, and I just, I missed the horses, and I just was working all the time. So I decided to bring the work home, and I put up one little sign that said Oz Farm Weddings, online with a picture of a wedding at Tavern. My inbox just flooded. So that was 2015 in the winter. So 2016 was the first year we started doing weddings up here. And, farm weddings were chic and, catering. I was like, catering for 150 people or 200 people a day, that's a joke.
It's child's play.
That's child's play. So, of course, I took on like 3 other properties at the same time, some wonderful properties. Deer Mountain Inn is incredible. So I did really grow very quickly. And then my catering expanded. And so for the last 10 years, I've been operating in Hudson Valley, and Oz Farms hosted over 500 weddings. We've hosted the largest gathering of defenders. We've done some really, really cool corporate events. So we do corporate retreats. And now we're trying to do some more in-house events. Like we're going to do a Wizard of Oz festival this year because everybody, why not?
Absolutely.
I have to. And I have a fleet of good witches. I will have 3 starting by the middle of April. So I call them the Good Witch. There's no place like home there's no place like home because it's a catering truck. And they're all, I was going to do the Good Witch, the Bad Witch, the Wicked Witch. And I'm like, you know what? I just want all good witches. So it is obviously an ode to my father's original food truck that he had in the 70s outside of Tavern. He called it the picnic truck. But they're so much fun because I can take them anywhere within a few hours. But 2 years ago, I did the tree lighting for the Palm Beach Worth Avenue with the mayor, with one of the witches. And so I'm really lucky that I've been able to bring together events at my farm and catering. But I'm always still searching for a restaurant. And I there's one suggestion? Sort of brewing right now.
I want you to bring back Maxwell's Plum to New York. I know you did it down in Florida, but New York is craving that kind of dynamic bar.
Yes.
That's cool.
Drew, Nobu owner, who's so fantastic and like an uncle to me and has been so nurturing to me my whole life. We had lunch about a month ago and he said it, and he owns the original bar. So Drew, let's get on it. But he did say, he was like, would you ever consider doing it? And I definitely would.
This is Drew Neaport, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He is, who started his career at Maxwell's Plum, worked at Tavern.
Get out of here.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah, we got to get him on the show.
Work on that, Jenny. That would be great.
I can get it. We'll get it done. He just wrote this incredible book. You got to give him some luck. I think it's called, what's it called? I Hate to Complain. It's so funny. Yeah, you have to read the book and read. I'm happy to put you guys together. But, all these memos that I have, Drew is in them. Everybody, all the management is in them, and it's just so fascinating.
Let's talk about those memos, because you are writing a book, and you have, like you had mentioned, all of your father's memos from his whole career. And I've seen some of them because you post them online, and they are sharp, and they are to the point, and there's no fluff around them, and I like that.
They are, Dad, I just found a series the other day of ones that he's talking about the 21 Club burgers and how, he diligently was requesting from the chef, why haven't you created the exact 21 burger for me? I asked you to do this 3 days ago. You haven't answered me. The onion soup, is the onion soup gooey and delicious? His words, that if you never received a memo from Warner LeRoy, and as kids, we would get memos.
You're kidding.
We would get memos from my father. I remember, I just have to tell you this story. I was like 16 years old. It was like prom season coming up. And he would send us articles. Both of my parents, one of the greatest lessons was, to read the newspapers every day. Read the New York Times every day, Wall Street Journal, all of those. I still do that. And the first, he sent me, there was some article about proms going wrong in one of the magazines, one of the newspapers. And he sent me a memo and it said, "Dear Jenny, please do not take ecstasy. Love, Dad." Now, I am luckily, even though I grew up in New York City in that era, I'm anti-drug. It's just not, it's not my vibe. People who know me, I drink tea. I don't even drink coffee. But I just was like, he was literally, "Dear Jenny, please do not take ecstasy. Love, Dad." And it was an article attached about kids who had overdosed at a prom or something. But so even as kids, we were getting memos. I haven't found that memo yet, but I have all of the memos that he ever wrote, and they are about every detail about the restaurant, and they are in his language, using his extravagant words that he used. And it was, he said, there's 2 kinds of people in the world. Ones who give ulcers and one who get ulcers. And I'm one who gives ulcers. And it's true, the memos, the stress level. And by the way, we just found the ones from 1977. I keep finding more. That means that someone had to type those memos, make a carbon copy, and then take them to the restaurant to find the chef, the manager, the person it's like the bartenders, like it was every detail. And it was, he wrote up to 100 a day.
That's so crazy. I couldn't even imagine being the memo messenger, right? When you see that person walking down the hall.
You're like, oh God, it's not good.
Another memo.
And obviously later on we had emails, and that's how we got them. So he could ask you an hour later if you hadn't answered his memo. But the memorandums of Warner LeRoy are definitely coming out, and we're trying to figure out the best way. We have been working on a documentary about my father, Matthew Miele, who's wonderful. He did the Scatter My Ashes at Bergdorf's. He's done some really wonderful documentaries. So it's all coming together. It does take time. And,
I think that would be
the events on the books.
So cool to watch. A movie, the book, you have such a rich story, your family, it's made for the big screen.
Yeah. And honestly, there are things with my story specifically that I would like to tell, to pass on to other people in business who are young, or
give us a
people
little
who
glimpse.
Inherit business. I have to say, my first day ever, that I worked at Tavern on the Green, I was cornered by one of the male managers in a dark, scary room. And I'm sorry to go dark on it, but I was 16 years old. And
did you tell your father?
I did not tell him, I did not tell him. And now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, like, what you just, women, what we go through. And we were trained, it was a different time. And now it's like not okay. It was never okay. And luckily I handled myself that day, but it was terrifying. And thinking back, I think I just was so scared. I didn't want to tell him or disappoint him. And I was so, by the way, protected by so many wonderful people at Tavern. The expediter, Todd, at the time, and Bruce, one of the pastry chefs, and the Molino brothers who worked on the line. And Michael and Bradley, and Sam Hazen was wonderful. Some of his sous chefs were a little, but it's a brutal world in that kitchen. And it was a scary moment for me. And I had other moments happen when I was older that I handled myself, but it's like, we got to speak up, and
That's right.
Especially as a woman. And, I'm a tough chick, but those moments, like, I want to inspire women, especially now. Like, you have to talk about anything that doesn't go on. It is unacceptable. And, we got to be fair, and you got to be good to your team. There's people. The number one thing I always saw was like management. Like, people think they're going to be managers and then they're going to have power and they're going to scare people into working harder. And I just believe in the complete opposite. I really, really do. I believe that you want to lead by supporting people and saying, what do you need and what can I help you with? And like, if you need extra time to be with your kids, people come back working for you so much harder if you are a human being to them. And it's just something I, have always believed in. And that's why I have great people who want to work with me. You can always find someone out there who doesn't like somebody, but other than that, it's just really what I strongly believe in.
Well, Jenny, I think this was such a fantastic hour. I appreciate you making the time for this. This was, as I mentioned earlier, it was extra special for me because I wouldn't be who I am today had I not had that experience at Tavern on the Green at such a young, impressionable age. It really helped make me a strong, independent person because I had to be tough when I was 20 years old, managing people that were working there longer than I had been alive. So I thank you for the lessons.
We wanted to give people, people, just because people are young, it's like, doesn't mean not giving them a chance. And that was important to me. And obviously Michael, we were all so young at the time, and we should do something from Oz Farm someday.
Let's do it. We'll do a pop-up.
Set you up here, and we could, inspire the women in the industry because they need support.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we should give a special shout out to Shayna, who connected us again for the show.
Yes,
she's one of my dear friends who I would not have known had I not worked at Tavern. And then, of course, Lee Bismarck and Anthony Chiafulo. We love you guys as well.
Love. And Michael Desiderio.
Oh, yes.
Our fearless leader still is. So
absolutely.
It was great talking to you, and I'll connect you with Drew and whoever else should be on your show because this is great. We need more voices out there.
Thank you, Jenny. I'll talk to you soon. Be well. Okay, thank you for listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. on AM 970 The Answer. Next week on the show, we're turning up the heat. Join me as I dive into the bold, colorful, and soulful world of Latin cuisine, where every dish tells a story, every spice sings, and every bite is a celebration. But that is the show for tonight. Thank you for listening and have a great night.
The preceding program is sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.
In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.